Now, here's Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, my fellow rare bookians. Got questions for me or my guest? 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. I'm going to throw out one of the most repeated trivia contest questions we've ever used on this show. If you can answer it, we will send you some kind of rare book swag prize. What's the name of the group that sings the theme song to this show? Who wrote the Book of Love? Who wrote it? Who sang it? What's the name of the group?
Oh boy, that I don't. Okay.
Don't say it. Don't say it if you do.
Okay.
It's an audience question.
Oh, then I know the answer. The audience just has to figure it out. Then.
Yeah.
Okay, I know the answer too. That's it.
one of the more complicated questions we ask though from time to time, and if you know the answer to this, I'll send you a prize.
There we go.
All right. In all the King Kong movies, when King Kong went from the island to the island, they used 3 different ship names in chronological order. Can you name them? Okay, here we go. It's not a question. It's just fun conversation.
There we go.
In the first one, it was the Venture.
Okay.
The next name change was the Petrox Explorer. Okay.
Okay.
Then they used Venture again, but the one King Kong and they went to Skull Island, and it was the Athena. So it's the Venture, the Petrox Explorer, and the Athena. No prize. During the break, I was showing something to Erik that, is a rare bookie and somebody that also for years did estate sales. We come across all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw this, for those on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. It's a fossil.
Yeah.
What would you describe it? Is this real? Is it fake?
So it's hard to tell from just the pictures. I would say that it's real. It's got some like touch-ups or something. I will say though that this is an item. If people see things like this or at other shows, oftentimes they are faked or they're enhanced in a lot of ways. A lot of times with trilobites will have very intricate spines, a lot of detail. And in those fossil prepping, that detail might not show up. So people will get the real fossil, but then they might paint on the spines or paint on these other kinds of things.
Would I want to remove this paint?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't. It's the thing is that like it looks more like a stag beetle, and at least
it is. It is.
And I'm not familiar with when the stag beetle came into the paleontological record. This would be one of those things that I'd go to my network and I'd say the stag beetle I know is something that's still around today. So if it is in the paleontological record, it would be something that's, a little more recent in the paleontological record. I'd go to some of my friends and say, well, what do you think of this? And then they would say, not only do I know that species, but I know the location, I know the dealer, I know everything about this kind of thing. And that's what I would do. But it to me right now, it looks like it's real. And it looks like it's got some it might be restored a little, but I can't tell over the screen.
No, I understand that. Mm-hmm. So here's a question.
Sure.
The Kislak Museum was the underbidder on T-Rex at $6 million at the first one.
Oh yeah.
A recent one went for this. A recent one. You always hear about the big ones.
Oh yeah.
What is something like that? Let's say it's the real deal.
Okay.
What would the price range of something like this one be?
Something like that one is going to be somewhere in the range of 50, 80 to maybe 150, maybe something like that on the high end. Now, if it's an incredible specimen, like, let's just assume that everything is real. You can see it's got a great big crack down the spine, all kinds of things that are just not like, then those are the details that you want. I have one too that I've kept offside. And I'll do my best to describe for our audio or radio audience, but you have this one here.
Wow.
You can see this one.
Wow.
You can see all those tiny little spines. Now, this one is real.
Yeah.
This came out of Morocco. And I mean, it's just a fantastic specimen of this trilobite, but you can see all the detail. All of that is genuine. And so this one, is going to be around maybe 3,500, maybe in the 4,000 range.
Wow.
But it's
Nice.
because of the detail on there. And I mean, it's a very, very rare trilobite. That's a liquid trilobite. Um, and so we have the Anthropyge trilobite. But it's a very rare specimen, and that's the kind of thing that you really want. And those are going to be from the maybe 400 million year old mark. So they're very, very ancient form of life. It's just incredibly fascinating to kind of hold that kind of stuff in your hands.
Is there an auction company or a company that has catalogs of these that people can look at online? Um, an auction that's not a billion, and a $20 million T-Rex, stuff
Exactly.
like this, stuff like that.
Yep.
Is there an auction company that's well known for that?
Not online. I can't think of anybody who's known specifically for it. The best you can get from is to go to an auction company that people are familiar with, and every now and again they'll have something that kind of pops up. The best way to get these kinds of specimens are from the different shows that they have. And I'll tell you, this is the hot insider tip, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of this before. But anybody who's anybody in the geological world or paleontological world, always go to the Tucson Gem Show. That Tucson Gem and Fossil Show, I can't undersell it enough. It is so, for people who haven't been, it is so much bigger than anybody is, really willing to understand when they go for their first time. And you can find fossil specimens that are from around the world. You can find some that are, excessively rare, extremely rare. You can find some that are complete whole specimens that are brand new, that are being unveiled for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find some incredible things. And I do know that people who are serious collectors for that kind of stuff, or people who want to be dealers, they'll save up all year just to go to this show. And it's worth it. I've seen people make a lot of money buying and selling stuff that they can get from the Tucson show.
Yeah, the gem end of it, I've heard. I'm not by any means gemological in any way, but I work with AIS, Appraisers International
Oh,
Society, and
okay.
Bill. I'm pretty sure on the show we've talked about, um, the that Tucson show and the gems and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that that are
Have you ever
there. Yeah,
been?
no, no, I
Oh, you
have
got to
not.
go. Got to go at least once.
Yeah, if I win the lottery, I'll go and buy.
There you
Okay.
go.
If I don't win the lottery, I'm not going and I'm not buying. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
no, I gotta say, I do one show a year now. I used to be a road warrior. We
Oh,
do
sure.
10, 12 shows a year, but at this point in time, as the song goes, it's a time to be selling,
Yep,
in that
yep.
sense. So we talked about porn stars in this book. What are your goals with this book?
Well, the book. So when and you mentioned it earlier in the show that I made a posting to the rare book group, and I did it when 2 in the morning, tired. I'm really hoping to try to see if I can find somebody who can, one, give it a good home, because I really genuinely don't want to sell it to somebody who's just gonna lose it or not handle it appropriately, that sort of thing. So you're out. No, I'm teasing. Okay.
No, 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 no. Well, I mean, at that price, I'm more a consigner than a buyer.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
No, but I'd really like to try to find somebody who can take it, give it a good home. My original intention was to try to list it at a prestigious auction house or something like that. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the rare book world too much, but I know that there are prestigious auction houses who can handle items like this, because it definitely needs the attention that it didn't get at the other show where I
Oh,
go.
oh, oh, there's no sense about Midwest local auction versus a Christie's, Sotheby's, or Heritage.
Yep.
I mean, what I would look for, and then again, well, I'd look for an auction that where I ask you a specialized auction, there are definitely specialized auctions that book would go in better than others. You
Mhm.
just don't want it in an antiquarian auction,
Yeah.
science, math, what's the theme of the auction? That's where the top will go.
Right.
Sotheby's, if I was gonna make two suggestions, it would be Sotheby's or Heritage.
Yeah.
I'm more partial towards Sotheby's for that, but Heritage is just amazing at times.
Mhm.
I mean, you just never know what they're going to come up with, what kind of unique thing.
Yeah.
But I'd want it to be in an auction where it doesn't get lost.
Yes. Yes.
or, and at $25,000, you're not going to be the highest price book in the auction,
Yeah. Well, and that's what I
you
hopefully
know?
not. I don't want to be
Yeah.
the highest
Yeah,
price.
I
I
know.
want to.
Well, it depends on what the price is. Yeah,
Yep.
and more so, what do you have into it and all that. The other thing, I mean, just in general discussion, if we were sitting in a booth and talking about this at a, we are sitting in booths talking about it. What am I talking about? Um, if you weren't in a rush, I'd be more inclined to wait a little while. So
hmm
you said the last auction record was 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'd want to know how many people who bid at that auction, who was the winner, who,
Yeah.
those kind of things. Um, because I don't see that being a wide audience of
No.
bidders.
Yeah, I don't either, especially at that price point too. I feel like that's the people who they really know what they're doing. And for me, like you had asked about different fossil auctions, and I think one of the reasons I prefer shows is because when I'm buying some very high end items, I want to hold them in my hand. I don't want to rely on pictures off of my computer screen, especially if
Yeah,
I'm spending that kind of money on it.
I'll give you another story that it's not a freak. I've told this story on the show, but I want you to hear it because it might open up a new avenue of thinking for you. Two friends of mine who are who deal in I deal in all kinds of stuff, but they consistently deal in higher end books.
Mhm.
Okay. They had a conversation about books that they bought at auction over a 10 year, 7 or 10 year, I think it was 7 year period.
Okay.
And they both came up with the same conclusions with the high end books that they bought at auction. They did not sell.
Mm.
Why? This was the thought. Let's use, for example, it's a limited edition book and it's number 4 or 5 or whatever, but it's an identifiable book.
Okay.
Who else was bidding at that auction? Their clients.
Yeah.
So their clients know that they bought what they were bidding against and all the other,
I see.
psychological and philosophical things that would turn them off to buying it from you because you outbid them.
Yes.
So I don't know if you ever entertain that thought, but when you start, if you're buying something high end at auction for yourself, I'll never put my hand down. But if
Yeah.
you're buying it for resale,
hmm
you might want to think, are any of the people in the bidding audience your clients?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, and that's it's interesting you bring that up because like I said, it's all about your network. And one of the things that I've realized is when I was getting started as a kid doing this, I'd go to some fossil mineral shop and I'd try to ask questions to figure out who the owner was. And then once I figured who that was, I'd say, well, who do you know? And then it kind of got, well, who do you know? Who does this person know? And you just work your way up the chain. And when you get up to a level that's so high, just like the people who are bidding on these rare books like that, there's only so many people who are up there and we all kind of know each other. That's the other thing, is that we all kind of know each other. And more recently, I have a friend of mine named Matthew Stream. He's out of California, but he's a meteorite dealer. And he
wow,
actually was able to pick up some pieces of the McDonough meteorite, which I now have. That's the one that fell over Georgia in June of this year. That's the one. I don't know if you're listening, if you're
wow.
familiar, but he's got some pieces of that. I was able to get some pieces from him. And anyway, I was talking with Matthew back and forth, and eventually we start talking, and we realize, oh, these other such a people, and we all have a bunch of mutual connections that we knew because we both operate in our own little spheres of influence, and we know this network of people. So it's interesting you talk about like when you're bidding, when you're trying to buy a high end item like this, whether it's the bidders or the sellers or anybody else, we all know each other and we all talk
Yeah.
to each other at least once a year. We all do. So,
The meteor story. I got, if you want, this is out in left field, but I'm known
sure.
for that. I brought this up one time. I'm on my condo board, so from time to time we got to take some courses. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
So nobody answered the question. Everybody laughed. Nobody answered the question. But I said, you and I know that meteor dust is probably more expensive than some illegal drugs by the ounce.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, oh yeah,
okay, the filings that they swept off,
yeah,
all of that stuff.
oh yeah.
Okay, what would happen if a meteor landed on a common property of a condominium? And
Okay.
maybe one of your friends lives in that condo, knew exactly what it was, picked it up and sold it. Who has legal right to the sale of that
Ooh,
meteor?
see, this is a question. This is a question for a lawyer. No, I will do my best to
The
answer it.
course was taught by lawyers. They didn't answer.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there I mean there's what I would think of is that when you're talking about something like that, if it's on a property that's kind of commonly owned, um I mean it legally speaking, I don't know, I guess it would belong
Yeah,
to the complex or I mean I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I would
Um
go finders keepers.
exactly. No, that's that
Yeah.
I'd probably do the same
We
thing.
got to
I
go
would
to break. We got to go to break.
sure go to break.
Break.
Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, book lovers. We are talking with Erik Lehmkuhl about his From Stone Age to Space Age collectibles business. I love that. If you want to contact us on the air right now, you can by picking up a telephone and dialing 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. Erik, how can people, what's the best way, what's your preferable way or ways for people to reach you off air?
So definitely through the website. That's we have a website www.professor, just like the word professor in Codis, just like the fossilized fish in Codis.com. And we also have the email there with the website. So it's Erik at professorinCodis.com. That's definitely the best and easiest way to get a hold of me there.
Okay. I see that you do appraisals, and this is a question I ask everybody and anybody that does appraisals when they're on the show.
Yeah.
Did you go through a training process with any particular group?
I not formally, no. And that's the biggest thing is that what I was I'm able to appraise like some Native American artifacts. I'm becoming more and more familiar with them now because I'm dealing with the people who are the top experts of the field, and they have multiple degrees in the science and the studies. They have talked with a lot of like village elders and that sort of thing when it comes to the Native American community. And so I'm able, because I'm around them enough and I have an experience as a dealer, I can say, well, if I were to have this artifact, for example, I could comfortably get this amount of money. And if there is a question of like, but I see some signs that this could be special. This would be something that I would bring to my experts, or this would be something I would seek further, information to. And there's a lot that people can do by going to the local university from wherever you're from. You can go and find these people who would be love to talk about it. That's another thing is a lot of these people who are in this world, they like to talk about this stuff. They've studied it. It's their livelihood. So people, not don't be afraid to ask questions and
Oh,
that sort
never,
of thing. Oh
never,
yeah,
never. The reason I ask is this: when I see the word appraisals, the word
sure,
appraisal, there's a difference between an appraisal and an evaluation. The
yes,
appraisal creates a formal document with a specific purpose. Your knowledge of these artifacts and antiques, whether you knew it or didn't know it, I would never question.
yeah,
You would learn, you would do.
yep,
The question I would have is if you are doing an appraisal for hire with a specific purpose, which usually means that there's a specific purpose for that occasion, that appraisal, the
mm-hmm.
appraisal is going to be in front of a judge, a lawyer,
Yep,
or
insurance company, sure,
IRS, even
yeah,
worse. Okay. And the last thing you want to do is present that information outside of the proper format. If you were going to describe the inventory page, this is a this, that, and the other by blah, 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 and blah,
yep,
blah, blah, and because of, I feel that it is worth, boom, boom.
yep,
I'd never debate you on that. I'd never ask you a question about it.
yep.
But in 2018, and this was an eye-opening experience for me. I've done appraisal since 83, 84, and I
Mhm.
never had one challenged. Some of them were into the multi-millions of dollars that went to
Wow.
presidential libraries.
Wow.
The format has changed and the prerequisite has changed. It used to be there was no, you didn't have to do this or have to do that. If the appraisal was written and you didn't get challenged, you were okay. I would suggest to you AIS, Appraisers International Society. They have a quick 40-hour course. You could take more if you want to, but it will give you the proper formatting to make your appraisal perfect. Your inventory would always be perfect, but the way you present that information in the it's not a boilerplate. Every appraisal is different, but there's words and verbiage. And the IRS itself
Oh yeah.
said in 2018, we want people to have gone through some kind of, training.
Yeah.
So if you want to do this, it's AIS, Appraisers International Society. Ask for Ellie Rosen or Bill Korst. And Bill is the one who goes to that Phoenix. I'm sure they both go, but they're both gemologists.
Yeah.
And but I suggest it. It's worth it. I do a lot of, appraisals are like I don't know how to describe it. Salmon cycle. Yeah, I do know how to salmon cycles. Sometimes
Yeah.
you don't have enough time, and other times the stream is empty. So just food for thought.
Yeah, no, certainly. No, I'd love to look into that more because when I first started doing appraisals back years ago, when I first looked into it, I was going around giving people advice as far as me with a dealer, and I was very specific to say, listen, it's because of the market, the particular show, the season, the mood of your clients. There's a lot of factors that go into determining value for something, but everything has some value where everything will say, somebody will buy this for X amount or whatever. And then I started to get into some rare paintings and some antique paintings and stuff. And that was my first foray of to doing quote unquote real legitimate appraisals because they were appraising things for insurance companies. That was what they were doing when somebody had a fire in their house and they had some, they wanted to protect their paintings from these sorts of things. So that was I learned from them for appraising things through for insurance purposes to say, and the insurance companies had different requisites of, you had to have so many sources and so many of, comparisons for that and whatever, this, that, the other, and then photographs and documentation, yada, yada, to back it all up. And then from there, I've never had necessarily a need for the appraisal because most of it is not necessarily appraisals, it's more of identifications. That's another like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Yeah,
but then to always grow onto that is always what I'm looking to do because that's how we do it. In another couple of years, I'll be on the show again and I will have done AIS and done all this stuff. And I'll say, hey, look at us now, and then there'll be some other hurdle to jump over at that
of
point. There's
course,
always the
of
next step.
course.
Mm-hmm.
It's knowledge. I mean, that's the whole thing. The one thing that I recognized almost on day one of the rare book business was you cannot master it in a lifetime
No,
or three.
no.
And it's the same with other fields that are infinite like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's an expert in this field. You might have expertise. And I'll tell you something else about the book business that I found out. From running hotel swimming pools to running entertainment programs, there's a lot of BS you can get away with. Within 2 minutes, you would know, I would know, someone else in the field would know whether somebody's BSing or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's something like that. But yet, there's so much scamming going on.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
scary. So, what are some anecdotals on yours? What are some of the things that you found? That are newsworthy, so to speak,
Oh boy. It's getting to the point where I to me, I've been around it so much that it's almost old hat. It's common knowledge. But to other people, it's like, you have a what? This is incredible. The last time that I was on the news was for I have some pieces of the moon, and that's have pieces of the moon and pieces of Mars as well. And that's is something that when you're in my business, it's very rare, it's very expensive, and it's very cool. And I love doing it. This is a big chunk of the moon here. And
Oh,
for the
wow.
radio audiences, it's a speckled stone that almost looks like asphalt, believe it or not, about the size of a
Wow.
golf ball, maybe. But that's a real piece of the moon there. And
Wow.
the number one question I always get asked is, how do you get a piece of the moon? And the joke I tell people is, well, whenever I need more, I just pop on up there and go and put
Yeah,
it
yeah.
back. Yeah. But no, the real answer is these are lunar meteorites. These are a stone hit the moon and blew a chunk of the moon off. And then that chunk of the moon fell to Earth. And that's how we can get them. And it's the same thing with the pieces of Mars as well. But the last time I was on the news was for the moon, and I have found some meteorites out in the field. I haven't been lucky enough to find a piece of the moon yet. That large chunk that I just show you, I actually got while I was in Morocco from a camel herder of all places. And I was trying to negotiate with him about like prices because I was trying to get this. And so we had to sit down for about 2 hours and drink mint tea and milk from his camels in order to
Oh,
get this
I would
stone to
have
bring it
puked.
home.
How much? How much?
How much? Let's see that. I think I brought it home after maybe $1,500 in cash. But for this stone now, this is definitely worth in the maybe $6,000, $7,000, eight
All
thousand.
right. So you're in the middle of the desert having goat's milk and tea. How do you verify it?
So this one, the simplest answer, which everybody loves, is we shoot it with lasers, and all that we determine a chemical analysis of these stones
Okay.
to determine their molecular composition. Then we can take that chemical analysis and then match it with other known samples. And so when you're talking like an atomic chemical match, it's as good as a fingerprint that this
Yeah,
stone
yeah.
is the same stone.
So this laser is like a spectrograph, so to speak.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
okay.
And I tell people who are who don't know, well, what does that mean? I say, well, we take a big laser at one end, and then we have a receiver at the other end. We shoot lasers through it, and then depending on what the laser looks like, once the receiver picks it up, it can tell us. We can kind of figure out what that material must be and in what volume. And because of that, once we take that analysis, compare it with the known samples, once we get that match, it can be classified. So that one that I just showed you was NWA 11237. And I know, very, very
Yeah,
romantic.
yeah, no, 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 yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is in Hawaii, yeah.
Yep. No, but there's the question I get asked most often is, how do I know if I have a meteorite? There's tons of people who go out in the field and go and pick up stones and think I have a meteorite. And the thing I always tell them is, listen, one in every 1,000 stones that you pick up that you think is a meteorite is an actual meteorite. One in every 1,000 of those meteorites is a piece of the moon, and one in every 1,000 of those pieces of the moon is a piece of Mars. And so it gets exponentially rarer and hard to come across.
How much
And
is that laser system?
oh goodness, I've never shopped for one, but I imagine it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But
Oh, really?
oh, I'm
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
I'm sure. I mean, it's got a lot of very sensitive equipment. I do know that you can get an XRF laser, which is like a little handheld laser. That one is anywhere between 30,000, 60,000. You can get a bargain basement version for 15,000, maybe something like
Wow.
that. A lot of money, a lot, especially
Yeah,
for
I would
the work.
think.
Yep.
Did you
Yep.
ever shoot it at something and it started to grow? No.
Yeah. Now that would be newsworthy, I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
No, no. If people are out there wondering if they have a meteorite, you want to check for this. You want to see if it has magnetism. Magnetism is a big thing. Radiation too. There will be some slight radiation. Fusion crust. That's the biggest fit. Like you see it with your eyes. And fusion crust is a pattern that you take a rock that's in space, right, which is very, very cold, and you superheat it through the atmosphere. It gets very, very hot, and so you're kind of like microwaving a frozen burrito,
yeah, yeah,
and you
yeah.
get that molten layer right on the front, but the inside is still solid, and so it forms this very unique pattern of this molten layer and then underneath that is still the actual stone. That's the fusion crust. That's a very, very telltale indication that it's a meteorite.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm thinking about all the meteorites we saw on Ascension Island and how they all landed in the ocean. We were trying to,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the second night, I lost track at 247, and I never used the word shooting star again.
Oh
We'll be
man.
back after these commercial
Yes.
words. Beat you to the music, Captain Hook.
Now, here's Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, everybody. If this show was a meteor, we are in final descent this segment. Erik, you are a fascinating guest, and like Stillwater, there is a lot more in your multifaceted experiences. We definitely want to have you back on the show many times, and we will absolutely mark this one for replay. If you want to reach Erik off air, you can reach him at PROFESSORENCHODUS.com. Erik, talk for a minute. Unfortunately, Edie's sitting in a bad position. The doorbell just rang, and I'll be right back.
Oh boy, don't worry. I got plenty to talk about. Yeah, if you guys want to reach me at all, that's professorincodas.com, Erik, Erik, at professorincodas.com. We also have a business cell phone number, and that would be 612-804-2647. And you can feel free to text that number as well and call it. We have a ton of artifacts, a ton of interesting things, and we really, really want to hear what people are looking for, because I really like to go out and find things for people. That's part of the thing that really gives me fulfillment, is when people are looking for something specific and they say, I want a book from 1587. Well, you know what? We can get you one. We can get you meteorites, trilobites, Egyptian artifacts, Native American stuff. I mean, you name it, and I have at least some pathway to travel. If I don't have it, I can find out a way to get it. And so I love to hear what people are looking for, except for your broken heart. Unfortunately, I can't find the broken heart. You might have to get that one on
Uh,
your own. So
yeah, and if you find letters in books that express broken heart, it's 50-50 whether you want to send them back to that person from
yeah, there you
1940.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, I guess if I had to say, what do I like? I like everything in books, but the six subjects are the six, as in SIX, not SICK. Art, archery, photography, and of course, hunting, fishing, firearms, archery, and military history. So, firearms military history. Just as a note, if anybody's looking for the Parker that was worn by Douglas MacArthur, it's coming up at auction, but you need 30 to 50K in the pre-auction estimate, okay?
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
sure it'll go for more. You've talked a lot about military.
Yes.
There's going to be innumerable, pick a number up to a Googleplex that have hanging on their walls, on the mantle, a sword, a long arm, somebody's uniforms or medals in the closet.
Sure.
What should they look for rarities, not the common
Ooh.
stuff? Or what is some of the common stuff? So if you mention that, they know they don't have anything rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Attack it from either point.
sure. I mean, honestly, like the way to see the common stuff is, does it look familiar to you? Like, there's a lot of firearms out there that, if it looks familiar, if it looks like you've seen it before, then chances are that it's probably more of a common thing. The rarity items are when you pick up something and it's got, four barrels on the end of it, and you're thinking, oh, I've never seen that before. That's where you're getting into that rarity things. Oftentimes the losing side of any conflict, that's the other thing, is that the losing side of any conflict is inevitably going to be just a little bit harder to find, because oftentimes the victors will destroy things, or they'll get rid of them, or because this is when you're talking, when it's actively happening, it's not history, it's current day for these people. They're maybe trying to get rid of it, or they're destroying it, or they're whatever. So anything that's the losing side, I have found to sell for a little bit more, a little bit higher of a premium for that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. Also, when you're looking for, especially when we're here in the United States, if you're looking for anything that's overseas, anything that's overseas is just harder to get here in the States than it is obviously in Europe, or in Asia, or in Japan, or anything. And the other thing that I'll tell people all the time is, especially when we're talking World War I, World War II, which there's plenty of people who have that, if they have a Japanese sword from that time period, you always want to try. I've universally always try to take that to an expert, because
Hmm.
you got to understand that the Japanese culture at the time, they had never really lost a war. And so when it was time to draft up and go to war, they would go to their mantelpiece and take their sword, family sword, and go into battle as their tradition meant. And sometimes they're picking up a sword that's 600 years old,
Hmm.
that's even older. And they would, because that's what you're supposed to do. So especially when you're talking the Japanese swords, that's something I always try to look out
Oh
for.
yeah, that's a wonder. Out of all the things I've ever heard said on that, that's one of the best ones that you singled out, the
Yep.
Japanese sword.
Yep.
I mean, Lugers. I mean, do you deal like if you came across a seriously collectible Luger
Oh yeah.
because it's modern firearms? Do you
Yeah.
deal in that?
I try to stay away from modern firearms. I only stick with the antiquities, especially in Minnesota. The gun laws are very strict. Like there's a lot of rules that say what you can and can't. And then there's paperwork, and I've known some people who are good people who didn't do anything out of malicious intent or anything, but they've gotten into trouble because they just didn't bureaucratically file the right paperwork. And just for ease on myself, I try and stick only to the antique guns. We're talking things that are 100+ years old.
1898 and back. Yeah,
Correct. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I will tell you, just since I mentioned it, there's 181 different kinds of Lugers, okay?
Wow.
And I don't know if you knew that, but there's
I didn't know
181
that.
different variations of them. The most common are the Frankenlugers, mismatched serial numbers, this, that, and the other. But if you happen to have, I guess it would be Grandpa's Luger, Great Uncle Harry, whatever, and it has an exceptionally long barrel, that
Hmm.
would be a naval Luger. That could be collectible. And if you look at the wall hangers, the swords, the rifles, there are certain names that will be on those swords, and there are certain names that will be on those rifles. If you happen to have found a rifle that says Krieghoff on it, that could be anywhere from 5 to 6, 7 figures, dependent on what it was. I mean, these were the guys that made the hunting rifles for the sheiks and maharajas, and all of that.
Hmm.
And Krieghoff too. There's a Krieghoff Luger amongst those 181 types.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, but I was curious if you came across that. So your interest in the military is
Yes.
more Civil War focused or
Yes.
earlier?
Civil War focus. And this started when I was a kid. We did Civil War reenactments when I was in high school, believe it or not, when we got to shoot blanks at each other and do the great big reenactment, just
Uh,
tons of fun. And because of that, that sparked a passion for that Civil War, that kind of that period in American history I really liked. Um, and as you got a little bit more modern, for me, I noticed that the more modern it became, my personal interest started to taper off, as far as like I don't like the more modern it got. And so I would go into World War I. I really liked studying and doing all that. World War II, obviously, like everybody's grandfather, I feel, fought in World War II. So I feel like there's that. But then anything newer than that, it starts to get a little bit less. I can go
yeah.
and try to find it, but I like Revolutionary War, Civil War, that sort of thing.
In terms of war, and a dumb way to describe it, collectability. Civil War has to be the biggest. World
Oh
War
yeah.
One is very low. World
Yes.
War Two, more collectible. And like you said, the German stuff, you find a 50 tank engagement badge from the Germans
Yeah.
versus similar. It's hundreds and hundreds of dollars
It
difference
is.
in price from ours, and
It
so on.
is. Mm-hmm.
So we got about, I'm looking at the clock, about 4 minutes left before we got to sign off. I can't thank you enough, Erik, for being
Oh,
on the show today. And I sincerely want you to come back on. And based on how broad and multifaceted your background is, whatever you want to bring up, I'm pretty good at leading, following, and getting out of the way. But I'm
sure.
sure there's a lot of things you've had published and on. If people want to see, have you had things published?
No, actually, I haven't. That's one of the things that I've been
Not
looking
yet.
into doing.
Okay.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay.
I've been. There are people who have said like that they'd like a little booklet of like places to go dig, or like different places that you can go to in the United States, because some people don't know how to get started. They don't know how to begin doing it. Or writing a little like identification book, because there are a lot of the I found a lot of the identification books, especially for beginners, they're almost too technical in a way, and I feel like there's a more common language that could be used.
Meteorites and fossils, beginner guides, but not the way they're written, the way you would write them.
Yes, yes.
That's, and if you do that, let me know. We'll have you on the
Sure.
show to talk about
Oh,
those.
I'd love it.
Definitely. Well, okay. Any closing thoughts, tips for beginners, things
Well, I'll
like
tell you,
that?
it's I once got has somebody told me this phrase and it stuck with me. It's nothing is rare. It just depends on where you are. Okay, because like we can see things and we can talk about very incredibly rare things on this show, and people might listen and think I'm never going to be able to find all of that. Well, it's only because we are who we are where we are. But if you go and you surround yourself with the right people, you surround yourself with the right places, eventually you too are going to have access to these types of items that are really really neat. So it just depends on where you are.
The thrill is in the hunt. I met my
It
wife
is.
at a garage sale, best thing I ever found. Okay. And it's the hunting. It's the thrill. We all want to find a big score. That doesn't
Mhm.
happen that often, but looking for a big score is like a salesman in reverse. You just got to keep making the calls. You just
Yep.
got to keep going out there. If you get calls about books or artifacts or whatever, I'm talking to the audience in this sense, learn how to qualify your buyer. People call us and say, do we want to buy books from them? I've got depending on what they sound like, I have one of different, 8 different spiels to get the proper information. So we're not going out there for nothing. So learn how to qualify your buyers,
Oh yeah.
and, anything that you're doing where you find, and then, going down the road, let us know. Even if you're not a guest on the show, we will mention it. I'm fascinated by the raw hunter. I
Oh yeah.
mean, I miss that. I haven't done a lot of it. I did it in estate sales. I did it in storage auctions.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love hunting. The way you hunt, I like better, but I don't have the skills or the geography here to hunt in.
And I'll
So
tell you, and this is something that if people want to watch the website for, we're thinking of taking tours of people to go out to. We're thinking of going out to the Black Hills in South Dakota and taking a tour out there and having some people go and dig for gold and look for artifacts, and we'll see what we can do. So this is still a brand new cutting edge thing revealed on the show for the first time. So,
I told
yep.
2 people in the travel business that they should look into hardy ecotourism on Ascension Island.
Hmm.
I can hook you up with someone that you can have that conversation with that can do all the tourism part of it, the
That would
travel,
be
this and
great.
that. Okay, I will send you his name. We
Sure
will
thing.
talk later. Ciao for now. For Roy
Yes.
Rogers and Dale Evans, what book dealers we be singing happy book sales and buys to you till we meet again. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks, Captain Hook. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.